Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Women of Asphalt Lead and Inspire series, and welcome. My name is Ashley Batson. I have the pleasure of serving as the current Vice President for Women of Asphalt, and I work at Ingevity based in Charleston, South Carolina. And today we have a special guest here, Nile Elam with the National Asphalt Pavement Association. And Nile is going to be talking to us today about advocacy. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar or have been involved with advocacy throughout your careers or personal lives, but I think it provides a great opportunity for Women of Asphalt members to get engaged in very important issues. And just thank you, Nile, for being here today. Before we begin, I wanted to have a little bit of housekeeping. So Women of Asphalt is accepting applications for our first Women of Asphalt Scholarship in conjunction with Caterpillar Inc. Recipients are going to have the unique opportunity to attend the Caterpillar Paving Operations Training, which is scheduled for the week of November 18th, 2024. More information on this can be found on the Women of Asphalt website, and Carrie will link the page in the chat. But all applications for this must be turned in by August 1st. So if you or someone you know is interested in this really fantastic opportunity, please make sure you apply. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Carrie or any of us at the Women of Asphalt. This is a very exciting opportunity, and we are grateful to Caterpillar for partnering with us and hosting some of our members for this great training experience. So in terms of Women of Asphalt, as you all know, as many of you know, we're an exceptional community of professionals dedicated to advancing and empowering women in the asphalt industry. And with almost 4,000 members across 25 branches spanning 32 states and Canada, Women of Asphalt has become a driving force in fostering gender equality and creating opportunities for women within our industry. And I'm just thrilled today again that we have Nile here to help us learn about one more way that we can make an impact for both the asphalt paving industry and women in general. In terms of housekeeping, let's please make sure that we want you all to be actively engaged. And so if you have a question, please put that question in the chat on your Zoom chat box, and we'll be happy to address those toward the end of our discussion. And with that being said, I just want to introduce Nile Elam, who leads NAPA's government affairs team regarding all efforts related to federal legislative, regulatory, and political strategy for the asphalt industry in Washington, D.C. These efforts span an array of policies, including advancing asphalt pavements and deployment via federal grants and research dollars, supporting robust federal funding in our surface transportation system, implementation of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, building allies on Capitol Hill via growth of the NAPA PAC, and collaboration with federal agencies regarding relevant regulations. Prior to NAPA, Nile helped lead infrastructure and transportation policy at the National Stone, Sand, and Gravel Association, as well as the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, and was most recently a senior director for the Energy and Resources Policy team at the National Association of Manufacturers. Nile hails from Alexandria, Virginia, where he currently lives with his wife and 2 children, and has a BA and MBA from Texas Christian University. So Nile, thank you so much for joining us today. And we're so excited, as we can tell from your bio, you've got a lot of experience and have spent much of your career in this space. And so I know I've just read your bio, but I wanted you to take a few minutes and tell us a little bit about yourself on more of a personal level, and just kick us off with a little intro on yourself, please.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, thank you again, Ashley, for inviting me to attend, and thank you to everybody in the audience. It looks like there's about 75 of us on this call, so I know everybody's got busy schedules and things going on in the middle of July. So I hope everybody's doing well and enjoying their summer, and you're in states where it's a little hotter out. Hopefully you're staying cool. But again, Nile Elam, I lead the government affairs team at the National Asphalt Pavement Association, NAPA. And I thank you for that very kind intro and bio. I've worked for a lot of places where it's like an alphabet soup of acronyms. So I was at OIDA, then NSSGA, then the NAM, and now NAPA. All to say is I've been doing government affairs work for roughly a dozen years or so. I'm from the DC area, so if anyone has flown into National Airport, if you go about 10 minutes south, that's where I grew up. If you visited Mount Vernon, either for your own pleasure or like some eighth grade field trip, I'm like maybe, stone's throw from Mount Vernon. So that's where I am. I did go to school at TCU in Fort Worth, Texas, and I love my education there and my graduate degree. And then I have a phenomenal family. I have a 3-year old. She just turned 3 at the beginning of the month, and I have a soon to be 1-year old son in August. So the chaos of Capitol Hill is mild compared to the chaos at home. But I'm really excited to be in this role. I've been at Napa since February of last year, so about a year and a half. But having previously worked at NSSGA, there's a lot of overlap on issues and member companies, and of course there are differences, but that allowed me to really hit the ground running with the operation and team that we have here and the issues that we tackle. In terms of just the staff around me, because it's not just me that does all the great work that we do, we have a VP of Environmental Health and Safety. His name is Howard Marks, so he's more of the regulatory bucket. So when we talk about agencies and the administration, a lot of that work will go through him, but that's a work stream that we share. And then we brought in a director of government affairs earlier this year, Mitch Baldwin, who comes from the Maryland State Highway Administration. So he has a lot of great state DOT experience. So as we talk about the policies that we're crafting in DC, does that make sense for state DOT? Or better yet, are some of the policies at the state DOT level something we need to replicate up and amplify at the national level? And then we also have two consultants, Paul Sass, a former staff director on the House T&I committee. So that's the big committee of focus on a highway bill that we would be working on. And then Chris McCannell, who's worked with a lot of Democratic offices. So we kind of have our R and our D. And as a whole, that means our staff of 5 people, along with a PAC treasurer that does the administrative work on Napa PAC. So I know I just covered a lot of ground there, and we'll have this conversation to kind of dive into all that, Ashley. But that's a little bit about me. And again, just looking forward to the conversation and happy to take whatever questions you and your colleagues have on this call.
Awesome. Thanks, Niall. That was a great intro. Definitely want to dive into some of what you just discussed. But before we do, I really just wanted to kick off with a basic question for some of our audience who may not really be as familiar with government affairs or government relations or advocacy. So, let's begin with the question of what is advocacy?
Yeah, it's a great question that I think merits a discussion on what that looks like, because I think there's folks out there that assume it's just sending an email to your elected official. Is it just going to the voting booth and showing, who you prefer to have in office based off the issues that mean most to you? There's a myriad of ways to be involved. And my job is to not only advance the policies and issues that ensure that the asphalt industry can grow and hire and keep working on the phenomenal projects that it has done for decades. But at the same token, it's making sure that our membership and the folks within these great companies are involved, because one guy in a suit in DC can't speak for the hundreds of thousands of people and thousands of companies that do this great work. So our job is really to ensure that we are hitting the right issues, and that comes from a kind of grassroots approach. So in my opinion, advocacy is really ensuring that you're following the policy, or you have a sense of the understandings of what issues impact how your company operates. Do you work on a lot of federal highway projects? That would then tell me you probably really want to make sure there's a robust highway bill. Are you having issues with supply chain management? Are we having a hard time procuring raw materials? Are there vacancies at your company that we're having a hard time filling because we just don't have the workforce? Advocacy is just taking these issues that you might see as a hindrance or an opportunity every day or every week, and letting us know so that we can do what we can to not only tell that story and get you front and center with the stakeholders involved here in DC, but more importantly, ensuring that Napa is driving those right messages. We do not operate in a silo in terms of the government affairs team. I think there's some givens that we'll always work on. Do we want a robust federal highway bill? Sure. Yeah, I don't think I need a whole lot of people to tell me that. But most of the issues, it's member driven. So advocacy, I think at its core, is just ensuring that if something's bugging you, if something is making things easier, let us know what that is. It's not always a one-to-one that it happens in DC and we can make it better or worse. But that does still give us a piece of the puzzle, the greater story that we know we need to be focusing on. And my job, I hope, is to certainly at the end of this call is maybe eliminate some of the curtain and ambiguity of what this job looks like, because you don't need to have a certificate to be in this job. You don't have to have experience in this department or working for these people to be a lobbyist in DC. It's really just kind of connecting dots amongst issues, people, and stakeholders. And at its core, that's really what I try to work on.
No, that's great. You do a great job of that. I think NAPA does a great job of doing just that. So before we get into more details about, advocacy, a lot of times you hear government affairs, government relations, advocacy. Is there a distinction between any of those, or do you think it all follows just a different way of saying all that you just said?
Yeah,
Advocacy.
I think it's saying the same thing, just cutting it different ways. There's some entities, trade associations, corporate companies that like to have government affairs kind of plastered across whatever that department or individual might be. And I think there's others that want to keep it a little bit more ambiguous deliberately, because again, that advocacy isn't just what's happening in DC, it's what's happening in your state legislature, your local, county commissioner or executive office, or city council. So I think you can cut that a lot of different ways, but at the end of the day, it's really the professionals and the issues that are going to then influence whatever stakeholders might craft policy at the local, state, and federal level. Yeah, if anything, I think there's different titles out there. So people think there's a ladder they keep climbing just because they're an advocacy manager, the government affairs director, then government affairs manager, whatever. So that's my conspiracy theory on that, but it's all the same.
Okay, that makes that a little more clear. So tell us, it sounds like at NAPA you have a robust team of seasoned government relations professionals, and you're covering all your bases. I mean, you've said you've got regulatory affairs covered, you've got state issues covered, and of course, federal level, Capitol Hill, Congress, all of those issues covered. Why is that important? To do that, and tell me a little bit more about kind of how you all operate at NAPA.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, to be honest, I think it's really an intention that we're looking at the big picture. So my job is primarily at the federal level. And I think taking a step back, it's also clear to understand that NAPA, the National Asphalt Pavement Association, we're the only national trade association for asphalt producers and pavers and contractors. Like we're it. So like if we're not talking about the issues, we can't expect another group to inherently know what that issue is and accurately share and advocate for it. So, our team needs to reflect that those corners are covered. I would say historically, NAPA's focus has always been on the engineering and technical. We have a great team in that capacity and specifications and, balanced mix design and how we deploy our pavement products. But from the advocacy perspective, a lot of it was making sure that we had a great federal highway package, whether it was MAP 21 or Safety Lou or FAST Act or now IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And there would be a couple issues within that, larger authorizing package, issues that would ensure there's material neutrality, right? We don't want engineers at the state or local level to be told in DC, you must use asphalt, you must use concrete, you must use this, you must use that. We really feel that the products and the needs of the customer should be prioritized above all, instead of a one size fits all, that a certain product here or there should supplement another. But I think as we've seen, I think more issues really transcend one niche industry. Like, for instance, chemical policies now, not just the chemical manufacturers. We talk about PFAS, for instance, and how that can impact water quality. And, does that impact whether that material gets released on a road or airfield pavement? And when that's pavement's milled up, does that now become the responsibility of an asphalt producer? And, these are issues we didn't talk about even 5 years ago, but that's where we are now. So the team needs to reflect that diversity. So it's now looking at items like environmental stewardship and mitigation, environmental justice. There are opportunities that we think the industry is doing great, like on reclaimed asphalt product, RAP, and our very low carbon output relative to the amount of tonnage our industry produces every year. But then there's also some challenges. There's these EJ issues, environmental justice issues, that might impact how we permit a facility through the Clean Air Act or the Clean Water Act. We also need to look at issues beyond just a highway bill. We need to look at tax policy, how an S Corp or C Corp is operating, and are we ensuring that opportunities for bonus depreciation or R&D tax credits are they available to us so that your companies can explore new methods, retrofitting your plant, new updates, how you buy and purchase your equipment, how that lives on your books, workforce issues. I mean, the list goes on and on. Work zone safety. These are areas that Napa wants to have a pulse. We can't do everything on our own, and it certainly takes a village. But our team needs to reflect all of that. So we're very proud to not only have Howard and Mitch on staff. Howard's been with the industry now almost 20 years at Napa. I think he's around year 18. Mitch is new to the asphalt space, but he'd worked at the state DOT for about 7 years. And then our two consultants are kind of our congressional whisperers. I mean, they've been on the Hill for 25 plus years. And I think with all of our knowledge kind of coming together, that helps us drive what we think are some great results. So a long way of saying that we need to have a robust team and we need to have a lot of focus and attention because it's not just a highway bill that we have to worry about every 5 years. There's so much in between there that we not want to miss the ball on, but we also want to make sure Napa's a part of the discussion and not on the menu.
Well, no, and it's overwhelming the amount of issues. I think that it has somewhat expanded to, like you said. I remember several years ago, we focused for Napa. Funding has always been the core. I think safety and environmental issues, but it seems to me it's that list is broadening, and somehow more things are getting added to your plate. So how does Napa prioritize? How does your team? How does the association prioritize those issues? When you have so many, like you've got a concentrated team, you can't be everything to everyone or everywhere at every time. How do you prioritize the issues?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I'll give an example of, I think, where there was a priority shared and Napa put in some time and resources and it didn't quite work out and we had to kind of reevaluate. So, there's always been a focus these last few years on workforce and making sure that, we had the labor and the expertise to continue our industry growth and take advantage of the federal dollars that we're able to utilize and a multitude of state and federal highway roadway projects. And there was this signal from membership to say, hey, we need to be bigger on workforce. We need to get more people in. We need to figure out solutions. And Napa put in some money. They put in some sweat equity on that. Now, this predated my arrival, but we didn't really move the needle that much because then it got into issues like immigration. And, while we at Napa think that we are the biggest and the best and the coolest industry in the world, I think we can speak candidly that the asphalt industry is not going to solve the nation's immigration crisis, right? There's going to take a chorus of industry stakeholders across a very broad spectrum. So I think it's not only ensuring that there's the right issues in front of us. And a big part of that, again, comes from our members. You're right. Funding is going to be issues 1, 2, and 3. I mean, that's self-explanatory. But as we get into the minutia of these other details, a lot of that comes from our member feedback. We have our legislative committee, we have our PAC political committee. These are the two under the government affairs umbrella that I handle, where a lot of these policies are discussed, debated, and brought up. We have our environmental and then health and safety committees under Howard. So those are also those avenues where on those regulatory policies, we can kind of hear on what's working, what's not working, and kind of the issue of the day. That helps us get a drive. A lot of it too is just what we're able to learn from our stakeholders, either at DOT or Capitol Hill. For instance, a couple of years ago when Buy America was really kind of moving and whether or not there was exemptions for construction materials and raw material inputs like aggregate and asphalt binder, the initial text didn't have those areas covered. So it didn't take us long to realize our members don't need to tell us that's an issue. The fact that we don't see our core product covered is an issue. So we have to respond to that in a quick amount of time. But there is a triage. As I mentioned, we can't be the voice on everything. And if you spread yourself too thin, you're not really being very effective. So there are other times where we work better with our friends in the aggregate industry or the ready mix industry or the road builders or the general contractors. And when we can find coalitions to work on those bigger issues, we can be a part of that voice, but we don't have to worry about lifting and leading it 24/7. So those are kind of the ways that we calculate. But again, without our member engagement on our committees and just reaching out to Mitch, Howard, and I on a daily basis, we may miss some things. So it's imperative, and thankfully there's a lot of great members out there that understand that, we need their help just as much as they depend on us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great teamwork, like a great team in terms of the collaboration between membership and NAPA and the other associations and what comes of working together in those coalitions. Certainly, there's strength in numbers, I think,
Absolutely.
when you're doing this job. So we've talked a lot about federal level issues. Are the state level issues similar? How are state level issues handled, and what's the process with NAPA or for the
Yep.
industry looking at state level um, advocacy issues?
Yeah, which is just as critical. And I know there's going to be some issues out there that for our member companies, it's the state issues that actually drive more of their focus. They'll say, hey, we want a highway bill, we'll support you there, but whatever the Wisconsin DOT does or the Florida DOT, that's going to dictate, or there's a gas tax increase in Alabama. There's going to be some of those levers that no matter what we do in DC, can't be pulled. But in terms of our state track, and we have our state Asphalt Pavement Association partners, our SAPAs, they do a phenomenal job of kind of checking what's in their backyard because we have 30, I want to say 39 or almost 40 states covered with our SAPAs. It would be extremely difficult for us already covering everything in DC to then have all of these state houses addressed and the different times they meet and who's in power at what time. But our SAPAs are kind of our front line. We have software to track state bills, and we can look for certain key items and hot topics. But that's more of just a information gather and distribute. We just don't have the bandwidth nor the focus and drive to have that state involvement because not only is that where our SAPA should be, our North Star has always been at NAPA to be on the federal level. So the good news is even though we may not be tracking every issue, it's not uncommon for certain bills to pop up in the state legislatures that we would love or that we would hate. And our SAPAs, our member companies in those states say, there's this bill on EPDs. How, this is how it's drafted. Does this mirror what we want to see for the EPD program that NAPA runs? And we say, actually, no, it's going to be really difficult because of da 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 da. We'll help give you technical changes so that those categories, those environmental categories are recorded properly, or whatever kind of professional technical insight we can give. So we do collaborate on that front, but really at the state work, it's through our SAPAs. So for those on this call who are part of those SAPAs, that's a great first line of defense. And if there's things that we need to keep an eye on, please let us know because it's not uncommon for a Speaker of the House in Louisiana to then, win a seat in Congress, and then suddenly he's bringing those policies with him, or other ideas. And sometimes those are really good ones, and other times it's like, okay, what worked in your backyard won't work for everybody.
That's a good point. So then, kind of looking at our membership, our folks on the call, and just individual contributions. So what can we as individuals do to help in some of these advocacy efforts, whether it be at the state or local or even federal level?
Sure. Again, I think just being involved, just understanding who in your immediate universe, whether it's where you live at home or where your company operates or where you may have multiple facilities or projects, just understanding the universe of who that is. So if you're in Smith County and you know who the county commissioner is in Smith County, and that's that the state senator and the state rep is Anderson and Paulson. Okay, so you kind of know that, and then your congressional member for that area is Congressman Smith, and then that's going to be Senator Menendez. Understanding just that quick hierarchy, and a Google search can do that pretty easily for you, or Wikipedia search. That is a great first step. From an individual standpoint, we don't expect, nor do we think that everyone should be kind of looking 24/7 on CNN and watching what's in the news or following their local paper. But what's great about our industry is that since we're road builders and we're producers, we have a material that's tangible that everybody knows, they see. They may not have an appreciation for what it takes to make that material or the people behind the scenes. But it's very easy to point to a product and then say, by the way, that highway expansion that was completed earlier this summer, that was us, or that was our team out there. Those were our flaggers. So What's great is a lot of members of Congress at their core do love infrastructure. They love to build and cut ribbons and see new things. And we're an industry that's the perfect, poster child for that. So I think that really helps take away a lot of the intimidation of, well, how do I approach and what do I say and how do I do this? So I think that already gets a lot of the work out of the way. And then, the last thing I just say is it's trying to be involved when you can, not only within the NAPA universe of our committees and the updates that we share, and if that resonates or if there's areas we need to focus on, but hopefully opportunities to come to town. And whether you're here on personal travel or professional, there's always ways that we can engage. And when we see those big items that come up, like say a highway bill, and we want everybody to support, we'll have forms where all you got to do is your name and your zip code, and it takes 30 seconds. But just getting a chorus of names and a chorus of supporters is huge. So I think from an individual standpoint, it sounds intimidating when you take a step back, but when you really look at it, just picking up the phone, sending an email, being on a call, that takes care of 95% of, I think, what would be a great representative of the industry. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people, not only in our world, but in a lot of industries that don't take that first step. And suddenly we're behind the eight ball because another industry is filling that void, whether that helps us or hurts us.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to that comment I made earlier about like strength in numbers, right? So you all do a great job of if there's something that you want the NAPA membership to help you do some grassroots advocacy on, you'll create a letter for everyone and send it out. And all an individual's job really is to click on and fill out the information, and then that letter will be sent. Just with your name and address to your elected official. And
Right.
you make it very simple and easy, but it's so important, I think, for you all, because the more letters you get, the more that elected official gets that same letter on that issue or some variation of that letter, the more they realize that becomes an important issue to their constituency.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. I mean, for folks that may not know, for most congressional offices, and I'll start on the House, you have a team of maybe 8 people. It's a pretty small operation. You have the member of Congress, their chief of staff. They have a couple folks in their district or state where he came from or she came from, and then their team in DC is pretty small. There's a communications director, a scheduler, a pool of legislative aides, and then front office staff like staff assistant, legislative correspondent. In the Senate office, you just magnify that because you only have 100 senators. So, two per state, they have a bigger team to work with. But like there's legislative correspondents, and their only job is to see the traffic coming in the office of the issues being discussed, whether that's a social security issue, whether that's an infrastructure issue, whether that's a foreign policy issue. And they will have weekly meetings where they give reports on what they've heard. And if there's, say, an upcoming highway bill that we love, the legislative correspondent will, if they're doing their job right, will tell their boss, like, hey, so I got 15 letters from these 4 companies just in the last 2 days about HR 6282. We got to put out a position, or we got to take some meetings on this. So it really does help drive the message so that when someone like me walks into that office and I bring up that highway bill, they're not hearing it for the first time. They're like, oh yeah, we saw some folks from Ingevity sent a letter about that. We'd love to talk about why this bill is so important to how they operate back home. So it really does help connect dots and makes everyone's job a lot easier.
yes, certainly localizes the issue and makes it more
Yeah.
personal, I guess, to that member. So let's talk a little bit about like what we as individual employees and contributors at companies can do, in terms of like plant tours and things like that.
Yeah, members of Congress are not the most modest. They like to be seen, they like to have a picture, they like to be in front of cool things. And coming to an asphalt plant or a project site, they eat that up because they get to put on the hard hat, they get to put on the vest, they get to see the big toys. If your plant is near an aggregate site, they can maybe hit the button that blows up the rock wall. They love that sort of stuff. So again, what's nice is like we don't have to talk about a very nuanced healthcare issue where there's not really a picture or an event or an engagement to capitalize. I mean, the work that you all do and your companies do every day is what members of Congress dream for. So plant tours and facilities are such a great way to get members not only to see your operations and get to know your colleagues, but better understand the material. I mean, to kind of give you a perspective, over a third of Congress that was here for IIJA when that passed in 2021 will not be here when the next highway bill comes up before September 2026. We're going to have probably half of the House T&I committee be fresh faces starting in January when this Congress adjourns. Getting these folks out to your backyard is critical because unfortunately there are members, and it's not any fault of theirs, but whether they've read something or heard from a different constituency, they may not understand, what happens at an asphalt plant, or they see some smoke billing and they think that that's, some terrible, emission when really it's just dust, or they don't understand how RAP is the most recycled product, in the country. When you get into a plant tour, it really helps humanize the issue and humanize how we operate and the great work and best practices that we all adhere to. And honestly, if anyone on this call is interested, the first step, you can just reach out to us and we'll connect you to whatever office. We can do all of the legwork. And then once the tour is booked, we just kind of hand it to you. If you want us to be there with you, we can do that too. We have we have a platform online on our advocacy website that gives a plant tour overview and some relevant material. We're actually updating that now. So we hope to have some more material by the end of August. So we want to give you every little bit, a bit of information to have a successful tour. And this doesn't have to be an all-day occurrence. I mean, a tour can literally last as long as this call. About an hour is really all you need. And then again, just talking through what projects you work on and why it's important that federal highway dollars helped get that highway expansion through, or that new off-ramp off that bridge. That's the sort of stuff that members love to hear. And again, if you can get them in a piece of equipment and take a picture or two, they love that too. So they'll do the job for you on that one.
Yeah, I've had some experience over the years, with those plant tours, and it's amazing. Just the real world experience that you're helping that member gain and learn, and getting out there. But the best part is at the end when you're taking the photos on the equipment, or they can really be a part of what you do and understand it better, and hear it from your side and your standpoint of why it's important that we need roads and infrastructure, and that asphalt plays a critical part in what we do every day, in our lives every day. So definitely something I think everyone should try to be a part of. So so if a company wanted to do a plant tour, what would you suggest they do?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, reach out to us if you're like, hey, we've never had a member of Congress here. Who do we start with, or how does this work? We'll give you those tools. We'll be able to say, okay, so your plant's here. This House member sits that same district, but these two senators would be helpful, or there might be someone in your delegation that sits on the committees we work with a lot. So we might say, hey, they're right next door, they're adjacent, but we should have them over because they're on the highway subcommittee and they would love to see what you do in their community. Or if you already feel like you kind of have a bit of understanding of our past work, like Ashley, you mentioned you've had plant tours in the past, but you're just like, hey, there's a new member. We used to have his predecessor, but he retired. We just need help getting someone out here. I mean, we can help connect those dots. But if someone wants to get the ground running on their own, we had a member company in Florida. They came up here for some advocacy events that we had hosted in DC, spoke to a member of Congress, one of their meetings, and just kind of at the end of the meeting said, oh, hey, and if you ever want to check out our plant, come check it out. And the member said, I appreciate that. I'm kind of busy now, but let me get back to you. And a couple months later, they reached out and said, hey, we want to do a plant tour. So that member company reached out to us, and then we made sure they had all the right talking points. They had all the things that they needed to know. We can give you the information and the things that are happening in DC that are relevant to whatever's going on. But you guys already know the talking points because it's how your business operates. It's how your people work. It's how your projects are built. I don't need to give you a Napa one pager on that. I will if you want it, but you already know that. So our goal then would just to make sure you feel comfortable, you maximize the opportunities to get a couple photos or a little press release out, and where appropriate, making sure that your CEO or manager or plant colleagues get a chance to not only meet this person, but then if they ever come to DC up here, we keep those dots connected and fresh. And maybe you're in our neck of the woods and you're like, oh yeah, we had that plant tour last year. Wasn't that great? We had a couple photos, and that member's like, yeah, and from that event, I now understand how RAP is utilized, and I really want to work on that on this highway bill. So it's really easy. It's really simple. We're here to help, but I think once folks do that initial outreach, it's a downhill effort.
And that plant tour goes equally for your state level elected officials, your local
Absolutely.
elected officials. Like, you really need to do it for anyone, any potential leader that can impact your business.
Yeah, I mean, open the gates for anyone you can get. We did a plant tour last month, oh no, beginning of July, with a member in Georgia, and working with a member company and our state asphalt partner, we were able to coalesce and not only get the same time for that member of Congress on the House T&I Committee, Transportation Infrastructure Committee, to show up, but then we timed it with a county commissioner, two state reps, and there may have been another like city council member. So we were able to kind of do everybody, and that tour was maybe 90 minutes total. I mean, it was like a 10 to 11:30, and I think they finished early. So it's great when you can maximize that with everyone. But absolutely, if you're federal, officials, if that seems like a bridge too far, a little too, you're a little shy. Yeah, just working with the folks that are probably your neighbor that sits on your local, county board is a great way to start. I think for a lot of the issues we work on, once they see a plant and they see a project in action, we don't have to sell the issue quite as hard. It's just for those people who have preconceived notions or just don't understand our industry. And the easiest way to break through that barrier is for them to see it up close and personal.
Yeah. So thinking about that and imagining, I'm going to host a plant tour tomorrow, or I'm going to go visit an elected official. Tell me some tips or some do's and don'ts maybe of like what that conversation should entail, or what it should what should we focus on,
Yeah,
or maybe avoid.
yeah, absolutely. I'll start with the things to really focus on. I mean, first and foremost, just an appreciation, take politics out of this. And we're talking about advocacy, and it's like, well, politics is everything stupid. Yes. However, you might have personal beliefs that don't reflect that particular official or officials, or, they might advocate on other issues that you're like, I can't believe they did da 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 da. But we're here to talk about the issues that support the asphalt industry. So I know it may be difficult, but we really do need to look at things through a lens of, would this person be helpful on a highway bill? Would this person want to support works on safety reforms? Would this person want to help on tax code reform that allows our company to grow? So you want to thank them for their time, because no matter what the political background is, anyone who takes time out of their busy schedules to visit a plant, to visit a facility, should be appreciated. And I think just getting that off the bat, they know they feel welcome. Of course, just being polite and professional. I mean, that's a given. And I know everybody on this call, and really this industry as a whole, checks those boxes ad nauseum. But it's always just a smile on the face. And they might ask questions where you're thinking like, God, did you, what? Like, you didn't know that? Or why are we talking about concrete at an asphalt plant? But it's just, walking through, because for a lot of these folks, they just don't know, or their staff are in their early 20s and they've never worked on issues or talked to anyone at an asphalt plant before. Um, Really just focusing on the things you know best, which is probably your plant, your people, and your projects. You don't have to get off into the weeds on the things that we've discussed. However, Napa has the tools and very simple one pagers and half-page documents, or just emails that I can give you with a bullet point, in which you can just regurgitate that information. We have a lot of great insights on economic data and IIJ funding and what's been going on in your backyard. We have great policy papers on work zone safety and highway trust fund. We have information that can help kind of fill the gap, so that you're not just talking about longevity 24/7, but you're saying longevity and also our industry, friends on this issue, or, this work zone issue is something that Napa has really been leading, and longevity supports these reforms. We have that material for you. So, we want to make that easy and simple. Also, just understanding that, these members, they may just want a photo op, or they may just want to see your place of business and your people, and kind of do it quietly. Sometimes they want a more genuine conversation, and they feel like we don't have to have pictures and this and that, which is fine too. I think just giving them that flexibility and opportunity is fantastic. Some of the don'ts is, we don't need to inject political discourse on other items pertaining to a plant tour visit. We don't need to talk about what's going on in Ukraine when we're talking about an asphalt plant in North Texas, right? Like, let's just keep it to road building. We don't want to talk about, unless there's an actual political event going on. Like, we don't need to talk about, hey, we wrote you a check, we're so glad that you're here because we wrote you that check. I mean, that we don't want this to seem transactional or disingenuous. It's good to refrain from unprofessional discussion like f-bombs and things that you wouldn't want to repeat in your kitchen, in your household. But there are members that love to show up. They want to be in jeans, they want to be in steel-toed boots and wear a hard hat. and they just want to hear, how things are going that week or that day. So I think once you understand that you're just having a conversation and not having a political debate, that really helps clear the air, and they're there to learn, and you're there to teach. So I would say those are primarily the do's and don'ts, and maybe the biggest do is just let us know either when you want to have one, or if you are having a tour that's happening in a week or two, just give us a heads up, because then we can do a lot of research, or we might say, hey, we actually had met with that staffer or that member of Congress just this past Friday. We talked about these things. You might want to echo that. So just keep us in the loop, because again, we have a lot of tools, and we would hate to miss an opportunity to leverage an event even more than it was scheduled for.
Yeah, absolutely. Great resource and tools provided by you and your team, and that inside knowledge that you might could share that through interactions you've had, or what's going on in DC could help those back at those conversations back at home and in those visits. So thinking about the Women of Asphalt, how can the Women of Asphalt become more involved in advocacy issues with NAPA or on behalf of the industry?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a Pandora's box. This could go in a lot of different directions. I have a couple ideas, but I don't want the things that I think could work to then, be the status quo, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people on this call in future discussions that will see this evolve, because what might work today may not work tomorrow, or vice versa. But I certainly think that it's a great program and platform and group of people that aren't seen in a lot of other corners in the construction material space, in the construction sector. Having a Women of Asphalt is phenomenal. And not only having Women of Asphalt, but having it on the scale that you all have built and cultivated from coast to coast, border to border. I mean, it's not just a pocket in 2 or 3 states. I mean, it really is nationwide. We see from the government affairs perch, from a workforce, from a DEI perspective, it's a phenomenal tool and opportunity to leverage to not only showcase the diversity that the industry has cultivated, but the doors we want to see open for so many people who want to get involved. I mean, we employ over 350,000 men and women in this industry. And so I'm sure there's a lot of folks that just assume it's a male dominated industry and it's just men building roads and laying down asphalt. But obviously, there's a lot of great women. There's thousands, tens of thousands of them involved. So we want to make sure that we highlight that story. As we continue to evolve how the NAPA government affairs team works under my arrival, it's not going to be the same that it was before I arrived. I mean, I think there's great ways that Women of Asphalt could be showcased in our fly-ins and in our larger workforce policy discussions. Obviously, there could be some items that you guys determine through your leadership that you're like, we want to work on STEM and education issues. We want to work on equal pay issues. We want to work on this or that workforce conditions. Those all might be items that, as you start to coalesce around some objectives to keep us posted, because we would want to envelop and help amplify or support. I think it would be great that we start identifying a Women of Asphalt champion in Washington, like an award or a recognition that doesn't have to happen, every year. Maybe it's once a Congress, so every other year. But there are some great women in Congress that I feel like really walk the walk and talk the talk as it relates to what the Women of Asphalt represents. So you have Senator Capito. I think she helped kick off your Women of Asphalt chapter in West Virginia and became an honorary member last year. There's Senator Tammy Baldwin, who is a huge proponent on ensuring our Buy America legislation captured the raw materials we needed so that asphalt could continue to be produced as it has been for decades. These are members, Nicole Maliotakis in the House, one of 4 Republicans left in the House that voted for IIJA, and that's really sad I have to say that, but she is one of them. These are members that understand our issues, and I think would not only welcome that recognition, but I think could be built-in champions. So as there are bigger issues on the horizon, you kind of have a Rolodex of like, well, who are the folks we've recognized and who are the people that have already been championing our issues, for years prior. So I think those are some ways that we can quickly and hopefully proactively take Women of Asphalt to whatever level you all determine appropriate. But it is a great tool. It's a great resource. It's been cultivated so well from the members, also from the leadership, that I think it would be a great partner to have, if not just within the NAPA advocacy, whatever you guys determine, and you just tell us, hey, call that office because we're working on this issue. We want to be helpful. So those are things that come to mind. But politics and the folks in DC, that evolves every day. So, there's always a new opportunity and a new challenge to take advantage of.
No, that's great to know and great perspective. And I think, yeah, you mentioned West Virginia, the West Virginia branch. I know they did have Senator Capito come. I think they are having in the next week or so Governor Jim Justice come to a meeting of theirs. So they certainly have led the way, I think, in terms of advocacy from the state branch perspective. I'm not sure of what other state branches have done at this time, but I think there's so much opportunity for Women of Asphalt at the local and state level, as well as at the federal level. And I'm excited to share, that the Women of Asphalt board, our board retreat's actually going to be in DC in September during the Hill Days. So we as a board are going to come up to the Napa office to have our meeting, but then many of us are participating in Hill Days with Napa, so that's super exciting. Talk a little bit briefly, if you don't mind. I know our time's getting short, and I do want to get to some Q&A, but about Hill Days, because I know that's the next real big event you've got going on.
Yeah, and I just put the registration link in the chat because you teed me up well. Yeah, we're really excited about this. So very quickly, Napa's kind of Hill Day fly-in advocacy program in DC, whatever you want to call it, was a pretty decentralized event through the Transportation Construction Coalition, the TCC. Napa, along with about 30 other national trade associations, are part of this group. As you'd imagine, it's all in the construction sector, road builders, contractors, et cetera, et cetera. That, I think, effort at its time did what it was supposed to and was helpful. But Napa, outside of just a one-off briefing, we didn't schedule your meetings. We didn't really build a program. It was kind of like you signed up, Ashley, and we would say, all right, unless you tell us if you need help, we're going to assume you have your meetings and Ingevity knows what they want to discuss, and good luck. I think we got a little bit dated in that process. So we've really tried to re-energize, and thankfully through Audrey and the leadership and our board at Napa, they kind of blessed this idea that we should have this co-located or partnered with our material friends that we work the most close with. And that, to be frank, is NSSGA in the aggregate industry. We work closely with the Ready Mix as a sister material producer association on a lot of shared issues. And so we came together and launched this Hill Day event. NSSGA, and I'll be honest, I used to be an NSSGA employee, so I ran this event. I know how it worked when I was there. It's a really fully fleshed program where all you do is sign up and you use whatever addresses are most relevant. Your personal address, this plant, these 6 plants, whatever. And once you come to DC, your meetings are already scheduled and built in. The group that you'll be a part of has already been established. We have 2 or 3 webinars before you even arrive in DC. So you have all the talking points. We give you the talking points. We have a Hill Day app that has all of your meetings. And if things move around, it shows in the app. It has walking directions. So even when you're walking through Longworth or Cannon, it tells you exactly where to turn and what room number. Bios for all the members. We have special guest speakers, networking events. All to say, it is a very thorough and holistic event, and it's only within a 48-hour time frame, but we really cram a lot in there, because if we're getting you away from a really important paving job in September, I want to make sure that time is valuable. I want to make sure you want to come back. So we do everything we can to prioritize and make that as thorough and as productive as possible. And the meetings that we schedule, it's not like we're getting, intern Joe who's 19 and is, trying to get his poli-sci degree back home. It is with senior staff, and a majority of our meetings are with the members of Congress. So it's with the folks that matter. And we do this all with as much hand-holding, prep, and material so that you walk in and by the time you leave, you realize that my job is just cloaks and mirrors, and you could do it yourself in about 5 minutes. So we're really excited about it. There's a link in the chat. It's going to be co-located with our impact group, which is great. So for a lot of those middle managers and kind of up and comers, it's a great opportunity for them. And I think last year we had just over 300 attendees, about 290 meetings. And I think we had about a 60% clip of those being with members of Congress themselves, along with like their chief of staff or legislative director. So again, you come up and a majority of your time is going to be spent with the right people that want to hear from you.
No, I attended Hill Days last year and just cannot say enough about how well done I thought that event was. And I'm really looking forward to it this year. That the app that you all use that, kind of between scheduling of the meetings, the directions, the talking points, it's all within the app, which makes it so user friendly and so easy to digest. I thought that was really awesome. And I also really enjoyed, and I've been to numerous TCCs over the last 10
Sure.
plus years and love that event as well.
Yes.
And they're both critical. They're both different. But speaking about Hill Days, what I really loved is that when you go into these meetings that you all have kind of arranged for us based on our address, whether it be personal or your work or both. You're there though with other members from the other associations like NSSGA and the ready mix industry, but they're all from your
backyard,
your backyard, your hometown, same issues, same location, talking to your elected officials. And I thought that's really some power in numbers. And we were all speaking high level about all of our common issues. And that's a good format for that. And so I thought that was really unique and I enjoyed it. And I'm excited to join this year and excited to be doing it with a lot of the board members from Women of Asphalt.
Yeah, and I'm so happy that you all will have your official business when you're in town. And we really, it's an evolving process. This is new, and I should have said earlier, the TCC does have good. I mean, we've been doing it for a long, long time, and I think being in May helps for a lot of folks where maybe your paving season is gangbusters in September. I can't leave North Georgia for DC at the end of September. Well, then come in May. But I think what we've tried to make is the TCC is kind of do it at your own path, at your own speed, in whatever capacity. We're here to just give a couple touch points. Think of the Hill Day event as just being totally turnkey. Once you sign up, you can pretty much put your brain on autopilot until you arrive. So we really want to make that easy. I'm glad it was a positive experience for you. And my hope, selfishly, is in time having Women of Asphalt be a core feature and program of the Hill Day every year, in and out. Every September. So, hopefully there's ways where that partnership could grow.
That's awesome. Well, I think we definitely want to explore and learn more and talk about that and see if we can, make something happen in the future. Well, I know we're down to our final few minutes. I think I did see a question come through. If there are any other questions, please take the time to add those to the chat box. But I do see a question here that says, can the feds, for example, DOT, FEMA, DEP, work together to streamline grant applications and provide multi-agency funding for roadway and drainage projects?
That's a great question. That it makes too much sense. So in short, no, because DC doesn't seem to always do the thing that's the simplest. Look, a lot of these agencies have their own grant process and grant writers and approval, offices. So, it would be great to have some continuity, it's some partnership and collaboration, so that if the EPA is doing a grant on something impacting EPDs or RAP product, it would be great if that was also kind of a one-to-one on how DOT would interpret it and how that information would be uploaded. At the NAPA team, we can't write all your grants and go through and do everything for you. However, if there are some grants you're following or pursuing, let us know. We'll always try to give some insights on kind of what the tea leaves are and what the agency's looking for, or the members of Congress that probably have supported that particular initiative that got funded in the first place, and maybe we can pull some levers there. But unfortunately, the amount of coordination between these offices at times can be really good. On the grant side, it leaves a little bit to be desired. But again, those are areas that we can continue to foster. And now that we have new agencies involved in the work that we do every day, right? We're not just talking about DOT and FHWA. We're talking about the General Services Administration, GSA. We're talking about the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. We're talking about the Department of Energy, DOE. As that starts to continue to move forward, we can help be that kind of industry stakeholder kind of flag bearer and say, hey, guys, can we just all have an advisory group that we all get together and everybody's kind of speaking from the same book. So that's what we try to do, and that's an area that we can certainly help. But that's a great question. In the short term, not quite, but we can definitely get there.
Maybe one day, right?
One day. There you go.
And certainly, I would say the collaboration has been very refreshing, I think, to see within the space of, the low carbon transportation materials grants and the low carbon labeling program, seeing NAPA pull together, EPA and FHWA and the industry to kind of work through some of those issues and programs. And that's really great when you have all of the agencies sitting at the same meeting with industry talking about how these programs are going to work. And I think you all have done a great job of
Well, and let me just make a quick plug, because I'd be remiss if I didn't. So, a lot of these grants, you think, okay, that's the government affairs team, so that's all those agencies. Our engineering, research, and technology team, led by Richard Willis, is really the brainchild, and they execute. And I don't know if folks saw, but yesterday Napa was one of the industries that received one of these massive EPA grants, $10 million, which is like the biggest times like four, I think, that Napa's ever received. But it's such a great accolade, and Richard and their team have done a phenomenal job fostering these new relationships. But I think we've also helped too to try to just say, hey, stakeholders, we as an industry do a lot of good things. Let's tell you about it. And so we've really tried to bridge those gaps that have made what's now been a very successful grant opportunity go. And it's great that we had that announcement. It happened again, courtesy of Richard, at an asphalt plant. So they announced a $160 million program for all these materials at Superior Paving in Bull Run, Virginia. And it's just what a great feather in our cap as an organization, as an industry. It's pretty cool stuff.
Yes, I got that email from the administration about that announcement, and then read that Napa and Richard Willis and that
Yeah,
Superior Paving in Virginia, and that was so cool to
very
see
cool. Yeah.
for Napa. So congratulations to everyone on the hard work on that. That's job well done, and well deserved, and very
Yeah.
excited to see what that means for the future for this industry. So I think any final thoughts you'd like to share before we wrap today? I don't see any other questions in the chat.
Just again, thank you so much for having me. I hope this conversation was somewhat productive or interesting. I mean, I don't see cameras on, so folks have just been, doing other work. I get it. I live this world every day, and even I can get bored by it. But I think just the couple quick notes I'll just leave with is the Napa Government Affairs team. We're here to work on your behalf. I am your lobbyist, Ashley. I am your lobbyist, Molly. I'm just looking at random names on the screen. I'm here on your behalf. I'm not here to, indulge myself. And it's a circus in DC all the time. And I don't want to be the ringleader, but you tell me when to go in and I'll be there. So just think of us as an extension of your team. And it doesn't matter how big or how small the issue may be, because if we can't help, I'll just tell you we can't help. I mean, one of the most powerful words you can have in Washington is "I don't know," and that's a good place to be. But where we can be helpful or point you in the right direction, we will. The second thing I'll just say is, for folks who maybe haven't had a chance to get involved, feel a little spooked out, or hey, this is going to take too much of my time, sign up for our committees. We've launched a new monthly newsletter that comes out at the end of every month from the government affairs team. It's one page. We keep it to one page. It's got hyperlinks. It's something that we hope you can read in about 50 seconds. So you get the latest and greatest. We have quarterly calls where we have members of Congress and we talk about the issues of the day. So you just don't have to wait until our mid-year meeting in Brooklyn next week or our annual meeting at the beginning of the year to hear something or coming in for a fly-in. And then the last thing I'll just say is when you can, please come to DC. Please pick up the phone. Please shoot out an email. I will write the script and I will plagiarize and type it all out for you. And then you just put your name at the top if that's what you want. But we get so much more value when there's other people saying the things that we say every day. And I'm not wearing a hard hat. I don't have the closed-toed, shoes and steel-toed boots as I'm walking through Capitol Hill, but you all do. So, having that insight and that perspective, no matter how basic or short or seemingly misinformed you may feel you are, you really do know the issues. So just encourage that engagement. And I think NAPA has benefited from that in the past. And hopefully through not only the Women of Asphalt, but just an industry as a whole, we can take that to the next level. Because IJ expires September 2026. We're going to have a lot of new members of Congress that have never written a highway bill. They don't know what the hell they're doing. We all need to be doing as best as we can to keep these folks informed and understanding that we do such great work and they just need to pay attention, and then that great work can continue to grow.
Absolutely. Well said. Nile, thank you so much again for your time and your energy. And judging from the comments in the chat, there's been a lot of positive feedback. So we just can't say thank you enough. We have recorded this, so please share it with any of your colleagues who may not could have joined us. And again, if you have any questions regarding the role you can play in terms of advocacy, please reach out to Nile and his team at NAPA for more information, and look forward to hopefully partnering with you all in the future on efforts. And I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you again.
Thanks. We'll see you all in September.
All right. Bye-bye.